Hi. Good morning, everyone. Hi, Nick. My name is Zarah. I'm an Android developer based in Sydney, Australia. And it's great to be back in Ho Chi Minh for what is shaping up to be another amazing Droidcon Vietnam. So, 13 years ago this month, I started my career as a software developer. 13 years. 13 years is a long time, and it means that I probably would have started coding when some of you weren't even in school. So I thought this is as good a time as any to pause, take stock, and try to figure out what are the things that I have learned over all those years, and how I can apply these learnings in the future. Did it work? It didn't work. I'll just use my keyboard. Oh, it's fine. Maybe this will work this time. No?
Okay. So every time you want to change slide, you can type.
I can do that. Don't worry about it. Thank you. All right. So let's do it. I grew up in a huge family. This photo was taken in 2005 when we celebrated my grandmother's 80th birthday. So as you can imagine, birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, all of them were filled with games and laughter and this wonderful sense of togetherness. So it was kind of a big deal that 20 years ago, when I was 16, in March of 1999, I moved out of my parents' house, the place where I grew up in, where I spent all my whole life in, 2 hours away from the city, and away from my grandparents' rice farm to go and attend university. I attended university having absolutely no idea what I wanted to major in. I am kind of okay with maths, so with my father's prodding, that's my dad, he was a mechanical engineer, and he encouraged me to put down this new and up-and-coming engineering field called Electronics and Communications as my major. We weren't rich, so I chose to attend a university that would offer me financial scholarship. Ateneo de Manila, my school pictured here, is a Jesuit university, and it's one of the most expensive colleges in the country. My classmates had personal chauffeurs, they wore flashy clothes, they were from affluent families. I felt totally out of place. During my first year, I had a programming course in C++. I barely passed that class. I hated it with a passion, and I thought I would never want to do something like this ever again. Since my major was highly skewed towards hardware engineering, that was, thankfully, my first and only software development course. And so it was 15 years ago, in 2004, that I graduated from uni. A few months after graduation, I took a role as a product development engineer for Intel. The job was very low pay, but also very high demand. There was a time when I was on the phone for, Oops. All right, let me go back. So our team supports the testing and manufacturing facility in the Philippines, which means that there are weekly quotas, like millions of chips, that we have to ship every single week. However, within 2 years, we kind of started to feel the business slowing down a lot. Testers were being shut down, products were being moved out of the country and into China and other places in Southeast Asia. It was time to reconsider my career. I have had enough of the semiconductor industry, and I don't really want to do more of the same. And so I took a break and looked around. What industry allows me to upskill myself even though the underlying technology changes? I took my chances and started applying for a software developer job. I know I hated it back in university, but if I want to be in the business of supporting myself, I know I had to face my demons. I did some online exercises and I tried to absorb as much as I can, as fast as I can. I was very lucky that I met a hiring manager who believed in me more than I believed in myself, and she gave me a job. She was very encouraging, she was very helpful, and she trusted me that I will do my best no matter what. And she gave me a lot of opportunities to improve, learn, and grow. Everyone in my team was very helpful and friendly, and they all tried their very best to keep me up to speed. And so 13 years ago, in 2006, September or August or September, around that time, there began my long and twisty, sometimes frustrating, mostly joyous, but always rewarding foray into software development. So for 3 years, I was making Java card applications. So those are apps that were installed on SIM cards. This was before we had smartphones with like gigabytes of memory in it. And I loved it. I made apps that were loaded into thousands, perhaps millions of SIM cards in Europe. And I felt like I was kind of maybe doing something useful. I then moved to Java Enterprise apps, and I hated it. Everything moved so glacially slow, and I had to deal with SOAP, and WSDLs, and IBM WebSphere. And all my work was mired in corporate processes that I spent so much time just waiting around for people. The industry at that time was much abuzz about mobile development. And so I took all this free time that I suddenly had and just started learning Android on my own. Why not iOS? Well, I had a work-issued Windows laptop and I cannot afford a MacBook. So Android it is. I started doing the exercises in the Android developer side, and I built the quintessential Hello World app. And then I thought, okay, that's it, I'm ready. So I started applying for Android developer jobs. And so it was 9 years ago, in 2010, that I landed my first role as an Android developer. I was learning on my own, on the job. I was relying heavily on this new site. It's called Stack Overflow. You might have heard of it. And it's just filled with very helpful people. So around this point, I started writing my first tech blog. And as I said in a post from the 6th of September in 2010, it was mostly to remind myself of the things that I have learned. I fell in love with the Android platform and I have been with it ever since. And then suddenly, 5 years ago in 2014, out of the blue came an offer to move to Sydney. I took my chances and said yes. 13 years, I have been a software developer, and I have worked with people from all over the world, US, France, Australia, the Philippines, India, Poland. There were times I was the only Android developer in the whole company, doing everything from like making design decisions to testing to even support. But there were also times when I'm just a small cog in a big machine. I have worked with traditional corporations and also with those do whatever you want, however you want to do it, startups. Throughout these years and all these experiences, I have picked up some lessons along the way. Some of them have been a bit painful to learn, but they are lessons nonetheless. So I find myself in the here and now, and I want to share those lessons with you. It is my fervent hope that some of these things would help you as you go along on your happy path of working in tech. So, with my first job being in support, as I mentioned earlier, I was trained to respond to each and every issue efficiently and very, very quickly. There was a time I was on the phone. This was the story I was trying to tell earlier. I was on the phone with the floor technician for 5 hours when he called me at 2 in the morning because there's an issue we need to triage. It was horrible. So yes, sometimes the job demands it, but it should by no means be the norm. I learned to ask myself these questions. How long has this issue been present? How does it affect my users? How much effort will it take to find the root cause and actually come up with a solution? Is it worth it to drop everything right now and fix this issue? Most of the time, issues can wait. And so there's no point in bending over backwards to fix them right now. I read a lot of code. I work in a team with 6 other Android developers, so we write a lot of code every day. But when I was starting out and I come across something very, very complex, my first thought was always, I do not understand what's going on with this piece of code, but the people who wrote this must have a really good reason. After all, they have been at this for years. If I was confused, I always chucked it against my stupidity and my lack of experience. After years and years of writing code though, I have learned that the best way to go about it is to make things as simple as I can. Mainly because I know that if I have to read this piece of code in a few months, I have to be able to figure out quickly what I was trying to do. But making things simple requires time and a lot of effort. And that piece of complex code, maybe the original authors were just pressed for time and they were not able to simplify it. Maybe that really was the best solution at that time. I have come to believe that real ingenuity comes from making lots of small, simple tasks come together to perform and achieve something brilliant and complex. So Ohm's law is a rule in engineering, and it states that the path with the least resistance has the most current flowing through it. But I have learned that sometimes it pays to go against this law and go down the path of most resistance. I find that when I choose to go down this path, I force myself to learn. Until a few years ago, I have resisted the idea of doing anything remotely related to Android's build system. It is a beast I wouldn't dare touch with a very long stick. But then I got into a situation where if I don't fix the problems that we're having, no one else will. And so it was through gritted teeth that I faced the beast and I fought it. But then I may not have totally slain the beast, but I got through it armed with more knowledge and possibly more confidence that the next time I have to do this again, I have some experience backing me up. So, how many of you here have a computer science degree or is working towards one? A few, yeah? So I have always considered myself a late starter. The fact that I do not have a computer science degree made me feel like I will forever be at a disadvantage. I was afraid to voice my opinions, and sometimes I'm afraid to have any opinion at all. I felt that everyone was cooler, smarter, better than me. To be honest, I think that having a bit of a healthy dose of insecurity is good for the soul sometimes. I felt extremely grateful to have the chance to work with cooler, smarter, and better people. And I'm able to recognize those skills that my teammates have and are really good at. On the other extreme though, I have also worked with other people who think that they are the best there is. And to those people, I quote my favorite musician, Ben Folds. Yeah, you may be the shit now, but you won't be it for long, because there's always someone cooler than you. In the industry we are in, things change very, very rapidly. There's always something new and shiny being released left and right. Sometimes there are new and shiny things that are a library, or a new helper method, or new hardware, or a new OS version. Every so often though, some of these new things, they require like a complete paradigm shift. And taking them on may not be a trivial thing to do. Especially in cases like this, I have learned to ask myself these questions. Does this solve a problem I have? How likely is it that this will be maintained in the long run? And how involved is it to use and implement and test? I have learned to be careful not to swayed by those who shout the loudest. Go through a quick risk assessment with your team, remembering to always keep an open but critical mind. Technology and best practices always change and evolve, so we have to learn to deal with it. I used to think that I need to keep up with all of these new things, all of it. I felt that I am failing as a developer if I am not using the latest API, or if I haven't tried the newest tool, or if we're not using the latest framework. I used to think that if I'm not exhausted, then I'm not doing a good job, and that I'm not working hard enough, maybe. But this frame of mind is toxic and unsustainable. It does not make me less of a developer if I don't spend my spare time coding. If coding during the weekends and at nights is what makes you happy, then by all means, go for it. But it is not wrong to acknowledge that joy can be derived from somewhere else. Go out, do something fun, play that game, binge watch Stranger Things 3. Enjoy it, and do not feel guilty about it. A few years ago, I used to work on a project with a distributed team. This means we have team members in the US, in the Philippines, and in Australia. During those project checkpoints, some leaders thought it would make our team look bad if we report to our counterparts that we have encountered problems and that there would be delays. They thought, oh, it will look like we don't have the necessary skills to do our job. And they made it sound like everything is going really, really well. And as stories like this always turns out, things did not go well. When others found out about the problems, it's too late to have a meaningful solution. Lying about our progress only caused more stress, more unsatisfaction, and yet more delays. Another facet of honesty is being honest with yourself. It is impossible to know everything. And I pretty soon learned that it does not make me less of a person to say that I don't know. I may not know the answer to your question right now, but I can either look into it or I can go ask someone who does know the answer. After all, I am like Demon Cat, and there's nothing wrong with that. I know I cannot be an expert in all of the things, but just having an approximate knowledge of many things help me adjust quickly and efficiently to the task at hand. It is kind of like keeping a quick reference file in my mind. It's an index of the things that are necessary to do my job. When the time comes that I need to pull an item out of that index, I am confident that I would be able to get that extra detail needed to accomplish my goal. Now I want to talk a little bit about mistakes. In my quest to continuously expand on my approximate knowledge, I regularly make mistakes. And that's okay. It is, after all, a natural part of learning. I learned to not be afraid to admit and own up to a mistake. Recognizing this is the first step to preventing it from happening again. And it's a good acknowledgement that I did take something out of the experience. As a teammate, it is my duty to make others feel safe that it's okay to make those mistakes as well. When something goes wrong, pointing fingers does not really solve anything. We work on the product as a team. We made decisions as a team, and therefore, we made those mistakes as a team. It is important to recognize what went wrong and to set out steps on how we can prevent it from happening again. But it is also equally important to not single out a teammate. Playing the blame game pushes everyone to play it safe, stifling innovation, creativity, and collaboration. In all my years of working, one thing I never really understood is why there seems to be a pervasive belief that if a piece of code was A, written by somebody else, and B does not use a new and shiny thing, it is automatically labeled as totally not good legacy code. There seems to be this drive to rewrite using that new language or refactor everything to that new framework. I am very much aware of the need to fix issues, but is rewriting something really the best use of our time? Is it the answer to all our questions? Is it priority one? So, let me tell you a story. At one of my previous projects, a colleague overhauled our networking stack. It has held up very reliably for about 3 or 4 years. And we haven't had any major incidents because of it. But somehow it got tweaked, and then suddenly things started falling apart. So we had a post-mortem, and one of the proposed solutions was to rewrite our networking stack to RX Java. This does not make sense to me because it seems like we have been very quick to blame old code without acknowledging what the actual root of the problem was. Sometimes we get so caught up with new and shiny things that instead of actually fixing issues, we propose a rewrite, thinking that it would magically address all concerns. When really, all we are doing is rewriting our existing issues into this new framework. If it turns out that there really was a fundamental flaw in our design and a rewrite is imminent, then so be it. I have written a lot of code over 13 years. There have been times that I have written something so good, it made me feel super smart. But then I look at that code a few months or even years later, and it is total utter crap. I have lost count of how many times I'm reading something and I go, oh, who wrote this? Gross. And only to see that it was me. Now I get all the hate for old code. But then again, as we have seen before, legacy code in itself is not bad. I choose to believe that people did their best given their current circumstances, bless you, when they wrote that code. I believe that because that is what I try to do. Even though I have what I think of as crappy code in front of me, I can honestly say that at that point in time, that was me trying to do my best. I guess what this all boils down to is that at some point, the code you are writing now will be legacy code. So stop the hate, be respectful, be understanding, and be nice. I have always been a fussy coder. I wrote and rewrote again, and I have always been so afraid of being judged at code review time. But then, is it worth it spending all this energy worrying? No, it is not. I have learned to trust my teammates and that they are not there to judge me. They are there to help me. There is no point in worrying about something that is done, so just let it go. Letting go also means not taking it personally when something that I have written needs to be deleted. Either the feature is not needed anymore, or the team has come up with a new and better solution. And letting go includes shipping the product. There really is no product if it is not in the hands of your users. So let go all the more and send it out. Unleash your work in the world. Questions like, is someone going to like what I built? Is anyone going to use this feature? They would only get answers if people are actually using this thing that we built. So ship early and ship often. This is probably one of my most favorite quotes. I first heard it on Mythbusters, and I found out that it was originally from ballistics expert Alex Jason. And I think it applies as well to software development. Shipping a product is only half the battle. The other half is learning from this release. I am a firm believer that developers are not users, or at least we are a different kind of user than the general public. As developers and designers, we have to accept that we can only assume so much. The ultimate judge is our users. And so it is my opinion that it is extremely important that after releasing something, we look at what our numbers are. Is it performing as we expected it to? Are we getting the results we need and wanted? Having more data available gives us more room for smarter experimentation. When I was younger, there were times that just thinking about the code I need to write would make me freeze. All the use cases and edge cases would come flying across my mind, and I would just become so overwhelmed, I do not know where to start. I used to think of all the what ifs. What if we need to extend this functionality? What if the user does this? What if we want to do this instead of that in the future? And what usually happens in these circumstances is that I write code that becomes increasingly more and more complex. My code base becomes inundated with these base classes that I claim to be super generic, but they're really not the base of anything except for that one class. And soon enough, I lose sight of what my initial goal was. And we all know where I stand with complex code. So try to be focused, be pragmatic. Do not consider use cases that do not exist. And all the what ifs about the future, let's cross that bridge when we get there. So one of the biggest pieces of ongoing work in my current app is to fix our app's themes and styles. Up until last year, maybe, we have a pretty strange setup that customizes so many things and attributes that I did not even know existed in the Android framework. And it became increasingly difficult to figure out what causes some of the issues that we are seeing. So we have decided to go back to basics and make sure we understand as much as we can before going crazy with all the customizations. Sometimes it's easy to get carried away with grandiose visions, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think it pays to know the basics first and concentrate on what you aim to be good at. What is our core mission? What do we aim to achieve? How do we help our users accomplish their goal? Most of the time, the answer to those questions is to be intentional and deliberate. I used to watch a lot of kitchen nightmares. And one thing that kept happening over and over again, aside from the swearing, is Gordon Ramsay ripping apart the menu and coming up with a new, much simpler one. He usually gives restaurants 5 or 6 menu items to specialize on. So, you know those pieces of code we write that does this one thing, but may also do this other thing, or this one other thing that other time? Those. Rip them apart. Make them small, discrete things that only does this one thing. It helps make our code be more succinct, easier to understand, and highly specialized. Spending time is part and parcel of being deliberate and intentional. Oftentimes, we feel rushed and pressured to deliver something yesterday. Sometimes we feel like the more code we write, the more productive we are. Over the years, I have heard developers give updates on a potential fix or another try. I have been in a stand-up where one developer said, I'm trying to push this build out because it fixes a bug that has been there for a while, and this is our 6th attempt at a fix. I was like, 6th? Why did we even get to 3? Maybe we should be better off if we invested the time to really understand the problem and figure out the root cause. Channel your inner Sherlock and do some sleuthing. Maybe instead of throwing shots in the dark, maybe we should have put in more logging to figure out what's going on. Take a pause, do some research, and be smart about the things we write instead of simply churning out code. So I have been going on and on about being intentional for a while now. So I want to make it clear that It's okay to change your mind. This may seem silly, but when I was a kid, I was afraid to answer any of those "what is your favorite" questions. I thought that once I say, my favorite color is blue, that's it, forever. Changing my mind later is not allowed, and I will be accused of lying what my favorite color was. I've since then realized that no, it's actually okay. Situations change, context changes, our taste change and evolve. So, yeah, my favorite color is still blue. So, back in 2010, when I first started my blog, I felt like I was going nowhere. I usually signed my posts with, "Let me know what you think." And yet no one left any comments at all. I started tweeting and promoting my posts, but that did not seem to help either. And then I remembered why I started writing in the first place. I was writing for me. That was my core mission. I was not writing for anyone. I was writing for me. So a few years ago, at Google I/O, I met someone who said, "Remember that thing you wrote 4 years ago? I was stuck on a problem, and that really helped me out." And that drove home the point for me. I should not stop shouting into the void. Continue helping the community. Keep on writing, keep on tweeting, keep on shouting. I think one thing that we usually forget to do in life and in love is to tell people what a good job they're doing. Did the teammates slog through a fix to a particularly nasty bug? Did a talk finally make things click? Show those people your appreciation, and then let other people know that you appreciate those people. Do not underestimate the power of a pat in the back or a kind word. Sometimes, all it takes is that one encouragement to give others a burst of much-needed energy. So, one of my most favorite authors is Neil Gaiman. Last year, he related an anecdote that I would like to pass on to you today as he wrote it. He is a very good writer, so I want to read it in his own words. So he wrote, "Some years ago, I was lucky enough to be invited to a gathering of great and good people, artists and scientists, writers and discoverers of things. And I felt that at any moment, they would realize that I didn't qualify to be there among these people who had really done great things. On my second or third night there, I was standing at the back of the hall while a musical entertainment happened. And I started talking to a very nice, polite, elderly gentleman about several things, including our shared first name. And then he pointed to the hall of people and said words to the effect of, I just look at all these people and I think, what the heck am I doing here? They've made amazing things. I just went where I was sent. And I said, yes, but you were the first man on the moon. I think that counts for something. And I felt a bit better, because if Neil Armstrong felt like an imposter, maybe everyone did. Maybe there weren't any grown-ups. Only people who had worked hard and also got lucky and were slightly out of their depth. All of us doing our job the best we could. which is all we can really hope for. I wanted to relate that story because I always fell into that way of thinking. When I first moved to Australia, I was afraid that any day now, they will realize they made a huge mistake and send me back home. When I first became a Google developer expert, I was afraid that they will realize I do not really know anything and I have just been spouting random nonsense and I'm just really good at Googling. When I first saw the schedule for this event, I was afraid no one will want to come to hear me talk. So thank you all for coming. There are a lot of things to be afraid of, and it is easy to pin everything on luck and chance and circumstance. But every once in a while, we should stop and acknowledge that we are successful. And success requires a good mixture of talent, hard work, and yes, a generous serving of good luck. So, do not be afraid to celebrate your achievements. Claim your success. I did this. I deserve this. And I worked my butt off to get here. And remember, the truer you are to ourselves, the easier we see that we do deserve the success we have now. You got to where you are because you are you. The best gift you can give to others is you. So be fully present, offer your best self, and always have fun. A lot has happened over the past 13 years, but a few lessons have stood out above all else. Be kind, offer your help when you can, speak up, your opinion matters, be generous with praise in public, and sometimes it helps to take a deep breath, close your eyes, take your chances, and just jump. Thank you.